It's something the rest of the world already knew after 2 years of genocide in Gaza and attacks on Venezuela and Iran. The American-led international order is dead. Mark Carney's speech at Davos last week declared the end of the post-1945 global order and the birth of a new one. We live in an era of great power rivalry, he said, in which the rules-based order is fading. Other Western leaders took a similarly stark tone at the elite Swiss gathering, warning how US President Donald Trump was tearing apart the Western alliance and bringing back colonialism. After weeks of threats against his NATO allies to hand over Greenland, Trump arrived at Davos, swaggering about his achievements and calling Europe not recognizable due to mass immigration. But in a classic Trump weave of escalating threats, followed by a last-minute climb down, he lifted the threat of sanctions and military action to seize Greenland by force. For the rest of the non-Western world, this sudden Western awakening is years too late. After all, it was not Trump's push to take over Greenland that finally dismantled the international rules-based system created after World War II. It was Gaza. Carney, as the leader of a major Western country backing Israel's genocide, helped bury it. Now he has eloquently declared it dead. He even admitted in his Davos speech that the rules were never for everyone, that they were in part a convenient facade for Western powers. And so Carney admits what many already knew. The rules didn't apply to much of the global south, from Palestine to Venezuela, from Yemen to West Papua, anywhere where Western economic interests wish to seize control of resources, or where people refuse subordination to US diktat. And Washington's allies had no problem with backing US aggression and brutal sanctions for countries outside the blessed circle of Europe and the G7. In fact, 6 months ago, Carney was telling Christiane Amanpour on CNN that after 2 years of Israel's genocide in Gaza, what was needed was a Zionist Palestinian state living side by side with Israel. The people whose children and loved ones had been systematically slaughtered, their homes and institutions destroyed, their land and villages annexed, should live willingly under the rule of their oppressor. This is the very opposite of the rule of law. It is the rule of the bully. Carney was part of the Western pro-Israel alliance that gave the apartheid state a blank check to commit crimes against humanity and genocide, shredding whatever pretense of a rules-based order was left in 2023. Trump has now torn off the last of the tattered, blood-stained facade of the system, sanctioning the International Criminal Court over its charges against Israeli leaders and defunding UN institutions. Now, Western countries are getting a taste of what the rest of the world has been living with for decades. What this means is that all existing alliances and relationships are up for grabs, and new, surprising ones are emerging. In China recently, Carney told President Xi Jinping that their new bilateral trade pact was a partnership built for the new world order. Carney said the multilateral system of trade governed by the World Trade Organization and the rules-based order of the UN, WHO and COP was being eroded and undercut. China was a more stable, predictable bet than Trump's USA. In other words, Trump's threats pushed Canada into the arms of Beijing. Meanwhile, the rapid redrawing of alliances is also happening in the Middle East. Old rivals such as Turkey and Saudi Arabia are drawing closer, while former allies, the UAE and Saudi, are now on opposite sides of a struggle for regional supremacy. This struggle is already impacting Yemen, Sudan and Somalia and putting the UAE's regional alliance of proxy forces in great jeopardy. For Palestinians, the genocide has not ended, but instead entered a new phase under Trump's Gaza Executive Board. The same old discredited figures who made a mockery of the rules-based order, such as Tony Blair and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, alongside pro-Israel billionaires like Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and Mark Rowan, have been made colonial governors of Gaza. Beyond Gaza, Trump's Board of Peace appears to be a new US model of rules-free governance to replace the United Nations, a system established to prevent aggression and uphold human rights in the wake of the Holocaust has been binned by Washington. Dozens of countries have joined the board, although traditional US allies have refused. So what replaces the old order? A new American empire or something else? Thanks to the brutal policies he has pursued, Trump may be accelerating the collapse of the US empire. Right now, that might seem unlikely, with Trump deploying the world's largest, most advanced military to once again attack Iran. But when force and threats are your only weapon, and even your allies are afraid of you, you're already losing. As Western leaders head to Beijing for trade deals and countries sell their US treasuries at record speed, that collapse could be closer than we think.